This week, I'm going to tell you two stories that George MacDonald wrote over 100 years ago. The first one's called The Light Princess. And it begins when, after many years of waiting, a child is born to a king and queen. Now, so overjoyed was the king at having a baby daughter at last, he didn't really keep his mind on sending out the invitations to her christening, and he left someone out. Now, it doesn't generally matter if someone's forgotten, only you must mind who. Unfortunately, the chance fell upon the princess Make 'em Know It, which was awkward, for the princess was the king's own sister, and he ought not to have forgotten her. Not only was she a sour, spiteful creature, she was also extremely clever. In fact, she was a witch. So when Princess Make 'em Know It didn't receive an invitation to her niece's christening, she made up her mind she would go without one and make the whole family miserable. She put on her best gown, went to the palace, and was kindly received by the happy monarch, who forgot that he'd forgotten her, and took her place in the procession to the royal chapel. When they were all gathered about the font, the princess managed to get next to it, and without anyone noticing, threw something into the water. She waited quietly until the water was applied to the child's face. At that moment, she turned round in her place 3 times and muttered the following words, loud enough for those beside her to hear. "Light of spirit, by my charms, light of body, every part, never weary human arms, only crush thy parents' heart." They all thought she had lost her wits and were repeating some foolish nursery rhyme, but even so, a shudder went through the whole of them. The baby, on the contrary, began to laugh and crow, while the nurse, who was holding her, gave a start and smothered a cry, for she thought she was struck with paralysis. She couldn't feel the baby in her arms, but she clasped it tight and said nothing. The mischief was done. Her atrocious aunt had deprived the child of all her gravity, so she weighed lighter than air. If she were to be laid down even for a moment, the merest breeze from an open window could have carried her away. But it wasn't till after the christening that the king and queen realized something was wrong. When the nurse began to bounce the baby up and down, she flew from her arms towards the ceiling. And there she remained, horizontal as when she left her nurse's arms, kicking and laughing amazingly. The king stood staring up in speechless amazement and trembled so that his beard shook like grass in the wind. "She can't be ours, queen." Now the queen was much cleverer than the king, and had begun to suspect that the little princess had been bewitched. "I'm sure she is ours," she answered, "but we ought to have taken better care of her at the christening. People who were never invited ought not to have been present." The king was tapping his forehead with his finger. "Oh ho," he said at last. "I have it all. I found her out. Don't you see, queen? Princess Make 'em Know It has bewitched her." "That's just what I say," answered the queen. "Oh, I beg your pardon, my love. I did not hear you. John," he called to his footman, "bring the steps I get on my throne with." For he was a little king with a great throne, like many other kings. The throne steps were brought and set upon the dining table, and John got on top of them and tried to reach the little princess. But however hard he tried, he couldn't quite reach her. She just lay there like a laughter cloud in the air. "Take the tongs, John," said His Majesty, holding him out to him. John could reach the baby now, and the little princess was handed down by the tongs. Because of her lightness, the little girl got into lots of scrapes. But whatever happened to her, she just laughed and laughed. There never was a baby in a house, not to say a palace, that kept the household in such constant good humor at least the servants below stairs. But above stairs it was different. The king and queen grew more and more worried about their daughter. The king had tried apologizing to his sister, Princess Make-em-know-it, in the hope that she'd undo the spell she'd put on the princess. But she said, "I know nothing about it." "We will wait till our daughter is older," the queen said. "She may then be able to suggest something herself. She will know at least how she feels and explain things to us." Meantime, the little princess laughed and grew not fat, but plump and tall. She reached the age of 17 without having fallen into any worse scrape than a chimney, by rescuing her from which a little bird-nesting urchin got fame and a black face. Nor, thoughtless though she was, had she committed anything worse than laughter at everybody and everything that came her way. She never could be brought to see the serious side of anything. When her mother cried, she said, "Oh, what queer faces Mamma makes, and squeezes water out of her cheeks. Funny Mamma." And when her papa stormed at her, she laughed and danced round and round him, clapping her hands and crying, "Do it again, Papa, do it again. It's such fun, dear, funny Papa." And if he tried to catch her, she glided from him in an instant, not in the least afraid of him, but thinking it part of the game not to be caught. With one push of her foot, she'd be floating in the air above his head, dancing backwards and forwards and sideways like a great butterfly. One day, an awkward accident happened. The princess had come out upon the lawn with one of her attendants who held her by the hand so that she wouldn't float away. Spying her father on the other side of the lawn, she snatched her hand from the maid's and sped across to him. Now, when she wanted to run alone, her custom was to catch up a stone in each hand so that she might come down again after a bound. Whatever clothes she wore had no effect in this way, but whatever she held in her hands would keep its natural weight and so hold her down. On this occasion, she could see nothing to catch up but a huge toad, which was moving across the lawn as if he'd 100 years to do it in. Not knowing what disgust meant, for this was one of her peculiarities, the princess snatched up the toad and bounded away. She'd almost reached her father, who was holding out his arms to receive her and take from her lips the kiss which hovered on them like a butterfly on a rosebud, when a puff of wind blew her aside into the arms of a page, who, having just received a message from His Majesty, received the princess's kiss as well. Laughingly, she tried to steady herself by putting out her hands to keep her off the page, so that, along with the kiss, he received on the other cheek a slap with the huge black toad, which she poked right in his eye. He tried to laugh too, but the attempt just made him pull a dreadful face, which the king thought he was pulling at him. This, on top of the scene the princess had caused, greatly hurt the king's dignity, and he did not speak to the page for a whole month. After long avoidance of the painful subject, the king and queen resolved to hold a council of 3 upon it, and so they sent for the princess. In she came, sliding and flitting and gliding from one piece of furniture to another, and put herself at last in an armchair in a sitting posture. Whether she could be said to sit, seeing she received no support from the seat of the chair, I don't really know. "My dear child," said the king, "you must be aware by this time that you're not exactly like other people." "Oh, you dear funny Papa, I've got a nose and 2 eyes and all the rest. So have you. So has Mamma." "Now be serious, my dear, for once," said the queen. "No, thank you, Mamma, I'd rather not." "Wouldn't you like to be able to walk like other people?" said the king. "No, indeed, I should think not. You only crawl. You're such slow coaches." How do you feel, my child?" he went on. "Quite well, thank you. I mean, what do you feel like?" "Like nothing at all that I know of." The princess had been trying to behave herself with dignity, but now she burst into a violent fit of laughter, threw herself backwards over the chair, and went rolling about the floor in an ecstasy of enjoyment. Seeing nothing but talk could be got out of her, the king rang the bell and sent her away with 2 of her ladies in waiting. "Now, Queen," he said, turning to Her Majesty, "what is to be done?" "There's but one thing left," she answered. "Let us consult the College of Metaphysicians." "Bravo!" cried the king. "We will." Now, at the head of this college were 2 very wise Chinese philosophers by name Humdrum and Copy Keck, and the king asked them to consult together as to what might be the cause of his daughter's weightlessness. The consultation consisted chiefly of propounding and supporting for the 1000th time each of his favourite theories on the princess's lack of gravity. "There is not a fault in the princess, body or soul," began Copycake, "only they are long put together. Listen to me now, Humdrum, and I will tell you in brief what I think." But he was anything but brief in explaining his theory that the princess really belonged to another planet, like Mercury, and that was why she was continually being drawn away from Earth. She must therefore be taught by the sternest compulsion, he ended, to take an interest in the Earth as the Earth. She must study every department of its history. Its animal history, its vegetable history, its mineral history, its social history, its moral history, its political history, its scientific history, its literary history, its musical history, its artistical history. Above all, its metaphysical history. She must become... "Hold, roared Humdrum. "It's my turn now." And he began an equally lengthy theory about the motions of the princess's heart being reversed, her blood being sent out by the veins and returning by the arteries instead of the other way round. Therefore everything else worked in reverse, and when she went up, she should be coming down. "My proposal for the cure is this," he finished. "Drain her blood until she is reduced to the last point of safety. Let it be done, if necessary, in a warm bath. When she has almost stopped bleeding, apply ligature to the left ankle, drawing it tight as the bone will bear. Apply the same moment another equal tension around the right wrist. Place the other foot and hand under 2 air pumps and await the result, which would presently arrive in the form of glim death," said Copycake. But their Majesties had too much tenderness for their daughter to subject her to either of the philosopher's schemes. Indeed, the most complete knowledge of the laws of nature would have been useless in her case. Perhaps the best thing for the princess would have been to fall in love. But how a princess who had no gravity could fall into anything is a difficulty, perhaps the difficulty. Well, I'll tell you about what happens tomorrow, when the princess goes for a moonlight swim in the lake by the royal palace. Till then, goodbye.